This program brought to you by the Arts and Communications Academy at Lansdowne High School. It's the Lansdowne Show.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Lansdowne Show. I'm your host, Sierra. Thanks for joining us.
It's the Lansdowne Lowdown.
So, it's the Lansdowne Lowdown.
It's the Lansdowne Lowdown.
The Hippodrome Foundation sends out, outreach groups, and we have a partnership with them for various events. One of the main things that affects instrumental music, band and orchestra, is that they will send out clinicians from the Soulful Symphony, which is one of their ensembles in residence. So the Soulful Symphony clinicians will come out and do master classes with my various sections. So behind, you see Mr. Rivera leading a sectional with the brass section, while we have a string sectional going on in there, and out in the auditorium lobby, we have the woodwinds, and then on stage, because they're the loudest, we have the percussion section.
And to get a little picture of their life and their passions and their fears, and it's extremely exhilarating. And then to translate that into music, and how can we bring all of our experiences together and make music as a single organism, as an orchestra. It's thrilling and daunting at the same time, but it's so much fun. I never want the time to end.
What does a nosy jalapeno do? Get a jalapeno business.
Hi, Miss Steve.
Hi, Nick.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
That's good. You're a history teacher?
I am.
So why don't you tell me a little something about history with Thanksgiving?
Okay. Well, from what we know, the history of Thanksgiving started with the Pilgrims on the Mayflower coming to America. They landed in Massachusetts, in the Cape Cod area. It took about 66 days, they say. So these people were on the ship for an extremely long time. Already, about half of the people on the ship had died en route. So, they befriended the local Indian tribes. It's called the Wampanoag. Basically helped them kind of cultivate the land and figure out how they could fish, how they could grow tobacco, grow corn was one of the biggest things, and they survived that first winter.
Okay.
Yeah. First Thanksgiving.
So how has that first celebration of survival evolved into the modern day Thanksgiving?
It's actually hilarious because, obviously those people never would have guessed that what they were doing would ever be anything more than just a party because they were still alive. It wasn't until, I think, about 1777 or sometime in the late 1700s that we started to kind of celebrate that heritage of colonialism and those first people to come over. So in the late 1700s, we started to look back kind of with nostalgia at those first Americans that came over. It wasn't until Lincoln was the first person to actually kind of make it semi-official. And the reason he did it was during the Civil War in 1863, the nation was basically torn up. Mm-hmm. So he was trying to figure out a way to kind of bring people together, the war-torn nation. So he made this day of Thanksgiving, they called it. And it wasn't a national holiday. He basically just said, hey, country, let's get together and celebrate. And he didn't even necessarily tie it with the Pilgrims. He just said, let's all be thankful. It wasn't until later that people started to equate Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims. People said, oh, let's think of a time in American history when people were very thankful. And it came back to those first Pilgrims that had survived. And in the early 20th century, we began to celebrate it as a nation. And it became official in 1941, I believe. And FDR made it an official national holiday.
And then, so how do you think the celebration of Thanksgiving has affected the nation?
Good question. Thanksgiving is a great way to kind of like come back together, reconnect with family, be thankful for the things that we have, and even if we don't necessarily like take time to historically remember why it started, it's cool that it has the way that it's evolved has become what it is. When we look at these people that started the first Thanksgiving, this is really one of the only times in history when a group of Native Americans and a group of settlers got along to the point where they could like cohabitate. Most of the time when we see new settlers and colonists coming over, there's a lot more violence. There's a lot more forcing Native Americans to try to assimilate or vice versa. And this is one of the sole instances we see in history of the Wampanoag people and the Pilgrims actually celebrating and kind of cohabitating successfully. We don't see that a lot too much in history, so it is a thing to celebrate.
Thank you, Miss Dean.
Thank you very much.
A brief history on Thanksgiving and its evolution throughout the years.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So that's been all for this episode of Mr. Conroy's Schoolhouse. Come check us out next month.
There's so many interesting things going on here at Lansdowne. Check out this.
I had a lot of blood coming up when I finished this project.
We're kind of like simulating, kind of like in a realistic perspective of how like a person dies, how we're going to use all the skills we learned so far in order to detect how they died, and do like a sort of like investigation.
Part of analyzing a crime scene and reconstructing the crime scene is figuring out how things came together. So we've been talking about what goes into analyzing a crime scene. Now we're constructing a small crime scene, applying all of those techniques for interpreting them sort of in reverse, seeing why something is the way it is and where it comes from. And then when you switch, you're going to be analyzing someone else's crime scene and then determining what their scenario is, what happened to their victim based on your experience creating your crime scene.
Well, you see, we're doing this because we made a crime scene and these are our victims.
This is my body, and this is my pumpkin face.
Pumpkin looks kind of dead, huh?
Yeah, his teeth are gone, and he's about to get ripped apart. We're going to stab his heart out. Stab his heart out. We're going to have a lot of blood coming up.
Yes, Mr. Carson, you can inherit your grandmother's estate if you're able to stay one night in a haunted house.
That's great. But can I still get a number 5?
What kind of dipping sauce would you like?
Barbecue. Katie, guess what? I got a 20-piece nugget from McDaniel's and they gave me a free Big Mike.
What? You went to McDaniel's and you didn't even give me a fried apple pie?
Oh yeah. They don't sell those anymore.
Yes, they do.
By the way, I sold the house this morning, because tonight we're moving into a haunted house.
What? How can you just uproot our family without consulting me?
I assumed you'd be on board.
Well, you know what they say about the word assume.
Why don't you ever like any of my ideas?
Steve, it's a haunted house!
Katie, that's just a figure of speech.
I'm sorry, Steve, but I'm not leaving this house.
Well, that's awkward. We already did.
Ugh, I gotta stop letting you go to McDaniel's by yourself. I guess I have to make the most out of a bad situation. I mean, after all, we did get this house all for a nugget purchase. I should be thankful. Steve, something is seriously wrong.
Darn it, Kitty, you broke the TV.
That's it. Stephen B. Carson, I don't want to live here anymore.
Why?
This place gives me the willies.
Katie, you're overreacting.
Blood was oozing from the walls.
The walls did that at our old house.
That is true. But I still don't like it here. Plus, I think it's starting to have a bad influence on Nicole.
That's ridiculous. Hi, baby. Katie, this housewarming party was the best idea you ever had.
It was your idea, honey.
Oh yeah.
Steve, please. We gotta get out of this house as soon as possible.
Why?
Get out!
That's why!
You're really scared of a voice, Katie? Catch you later, Steve. Babies.
For God's sake, Steve, let's just leave!
I worked long and hard for this house, and nothing, I mean nothing, could make me leave. Except that. Let's go home. Katie, could you give me a hand?